along and see
where it takes us.
Just how this can work with the wind and the construction noise and the traffic going by and nature. And it is fall in Iowa, and this is Tina Bakehouse, by the way.
Hello.
Campfire Conversations. And Tina, you have driven up from what
Southwest
part of
Iowa.
You're in Southwest Iowa.
Yes, I am. So not far from Hastings, Malvern area. It's on a farm,
know exactly where that's at.
Yes.
So I'm sure that you've been driving past a lot of harvesting coming all the way up. I mean,
absolutely.
Is most of the fields empty now that you've seen?
It's looking like it, and lots of great, beautiful yields, and there's just this neat vibrancy. I feel like every fall there's something energetically that just has got a beautiful, the crispness of the air that we're finally feeling, right? It's been a long summer, which I've loved. And now the leaves are starting to change, and the moon at night, that contrast to the bright, and we're supposed to have supermoon tonight, which I'm looking forward to. And the comet, I don't know if you got to see that.
I have been looking and haven't seen it yet.
Oh,
have you seen
I saw
it.
I did. It was beautiful, and apparently it's not going to happen for thousands of years later, so not in our lifetime. So.
Right. Well, I saw one back in the 90s. I think it was that Hale-Bopp comet that had got such a bad reputation after what happened out in California, but I saw that very clearly. I mean, it looked like it was photoshopped in there.
Yeah, and you could see the haze of the blue and the red tail, which was so cool.
Well, Tina, you help people speak better? I mean, how can I describe best what it is that you do? Because you've kind of carved a great niche out for yourself here.
Yeah, I would consider myself an intuitive communication coach. And what that means is I really get at the heart of people's ability to find their voice and speak their truth, their story in various venues, stages, and spaces, and to find their authentic self. So to craft those messages that matter with confidence and clarity. And so I've worked with anyone from a CEO who is abstract, has amazing ideas, but just can't land on their teams of people. So I help them craft really concretely how to get that idea out there, to the author who wants to get a keynote, TED Talk, to the small business owner who wants clarity of how do I share a message that matters in story form. So wide range, from healthcare to financial planners to agricultural farmers who have policy changes, speeches, and beyond.
So it's not just somebody who's standing up on a stage then, because
correct.
It sounds like you help, like with the CEO, he wants to be able to communicate better with his staff or with potential clients, and that's not a big giant public speaking event.
Right, exactly, and that's where I've dabbled into different titles. I mean, we're all, as human beings, we like categories, we like titles for clarity. So when you hear someone is a communication studies professor at Creighton University, we kind of have a picture of what that looks like. Or if you're working as an executive director at a nonprofit, or if you are a marketing manager for a company, and you have a better clarity of that. And so what I do is a wide range. I've gone into libraries and done creative dramas for youth and communities to get them to engage with each other, to like you say, the CEO that just wants to find, how do I get to the point, or even the salesperson is, how do I persuade in a way that doesn't feel icky, that slick salesperson, but does so from heart in a sacred way that connects and co-creates messages with their clients or potential customers.
Is a lot of it being able to read a room and being able to relate to what you're feeling from the person who's listening?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot. First of all, I like to say we all have the ability to be magnetic. And I define magnetism from a communication lens as using your words, your voice, your body, your overall energy and essence to make that impact that you desire, that you connect with self first so that you can then connect to the other. And absolutely the context matters. So it's first knowing thyself, as Plato says, and being aware of what are those idiosyncrasies. I mean, you're your own communicator, I'm my own, and we all have our own strengths and abilities that we bring to the table. Then we're able to, if we have that self-awareness, then we can meet the other where they are. That's the key to great communication, is to know thyself and be in that space with the other and see who you're being to connect with the other being.
I think what's happening right now, and especially with anyone who might be listening or watching that is not from this area, they have an image of what folks in Iowa, and especially rural Iowa, are like. And no, you could drop your service into any metropolitan area in the country and fit right in, but yet you choose to live in Southwest Iowa.
Well, my roots are here. I was a Walt Disney World cast member, so I've worked there.
What did you do for Walt Disney?
So I actually started in attractions at Splash Mountain, which is an attraction that doesn't exist anymore, and then I got promoted into parades. So I coordinated the 3 o'clock day parade as well as the Spectral Magic Night Parade. So I helped make sure that costumes were good to go, that it was flowing, and then taking care of guests along the way. So
California or Florida?
Florida. Yep, Walt Disney World in Orlando area, and worked at Omaha Steaks and Human Resources. So I've lived in different parts and pieces. And what drew me back is there is something about the heart and center and space and feel and vibe of rural communities, and the blessing of having the metropolitan Omaha close. We have the best of both worlds. So we can get the arts, but then we can also have what you have behind you, the vista of trees and nature and spaciousness, to be part of that. And so you're right, like I do have national and international clients because of this beautiful thing of technology.
Well,
so
yeah.
I'm lucky in that regard, but I also travel as well outside of Southwest Iowa because I do love the vibe of city. I do enjoy switching it up, but there is something to be said about the heart of what I think Iowans are all about, and that is that real hospitality, and they're all about connecting with each other and helping each other, especially in harvest. You see that, where if someone can't get the crops out, people come together, the neighbors come together and get it done.
How often, I'm speaking from experience because I know how often I hear this, but how often do you hear when you're helping someone, as you said, find their voice, or how are you going to communicate? They say, I don't like the sound of my own voice. I hear that a lot.
It is true, and what's interesting, I spoke with about 200 bankers this past week in Altoona Community State Bank, and people raised their hands when I mentioned that, or nodded, or acknowledged that. And I think what it is that even when I even cringe a little bit watching myself on video. I've gotten better about it. There's something weird and wanky about it, right? You're like, I don't want to see myself, because we feel like we look and sound differently in our heads than what we visualize. And so, yes, I've heard that quite often, and I think that impacts how we present ourselves. When we have this perception of, well, that's not my voice, or I don't like my voice, then guess what you do? It cripples you into not accepting speaking opportunities. I know someone who's brilliant beyond a doubt, has a beautiful background in psychology, and has rich information to share, and has said, I don't like the sound of my voice. And guess what? That has prevented that person from getting out there and sharing information that could really improve people's lives. And so I think what it is it's acknowledging that we have this instrument. And yes, there are parts and pieces of your voice that are quality, like DNA, you are predisposed to, but there are also ways about breath and training that you can actually enhance your voice that you have.
Typically what I tell people is there's 8 billion people walking around on the planet, and the only one who hears your voice the way you like it is you. Everyone else hears it the way that you say you don't like it. I have to tell myself that, because when you brought up video, I relate completely to that. This is different for me that I'm doing now. I was radio. I was just, as my old radio buddy Jeff Larson liked to say, I get paid to sit in a tiny room and talk to invisible people. That was what my job was. I didn't see who it was that I was talking to. And to be honest, I see a guest, but I don't see the listeners or the viewers. Mm-hmm. But that video that's catching me right now is exactly what you see. But it's not the image I have in my head.
Right.
And that is a huge thing to overcome. And I think that by switching to video, I am able to empathize more with those who struggle with the voice end of it. Even though, because I've spoken so much in my life, and you've spoken so much in your life, that's not an issue for you at all. But this helps me be able to relate to that person a little bit better, and maybe I can bring it out a little better as to make them more comfortable in talking.
Yeah, so I'm curious then, Todd, like when you think about it that way, is it really, because hearing our voice is one thing, but do you think it's that combination of the visual image that we start to get even more like critical of ourselves? And because there's voice quality, then there's voice and face. And so I wonder if that's part of it too, is that why did I wear that shirt? Or I don't know.
That exact thing.
Or that facial
Yep.
expression on
Yep.
top of the words that I said.
Yeah, that exact thing has crossed my mind. It has, oh, I don't like how I'm sitting because I don't like the shape of my body like that. I'm sounding very like I'm just so worried about myself here, but that, I see that kind of thing. But are you familiar with there's a show on Netflix now, Jerry Seinfeld did it, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
Yes.
I think it's one of the most brilliant shows I've ever seen.
He is brilliant.
Yes, and he had Howard Stern on. And they're driving around, and he was making a joke to Howard that, hey, I'll bet you had your hair done this morning getting ready for this, didn't you? And he said, yeah, I did. I was just all, concerned about it, and I needed to look just right and all that. And Jerry looked at him and said, no one cares about your hair, Howard. And that stuck with me. No one cares about what shirt I'm wearing. No one cares.
We care and think others care
yes,
more, yes.
I see other things about myself that other people don't see, and that's what video does. I think the same thing with audio, that most people who struggle with, I don't like the sound of my own voice, are hearing things that no one else is hearing.
Well, and think about too, when we watch ourselves, we know our bodies, we see our bodies, in the way that we are in this form. And yet we don't look in the mirrors very much because of that fear of what we will see. I was hearing Mel Robbins' podcast that said that very thing, that most people don't even hardly look at themselves in the mirror for the fear of, I look too old, or, oh, those crow's feet, or, oh, that skin color, or what have you. And I think of the show David Letterman. He has an interviewing show. I don't know if you've checked that out.
Yeah,
and he interviewed Lizzo, and she brought him into her studio, the musician, and he was very nervous. It was very clear. Like, I've not seen David Letterman that nervous around. I mean, she's bodacious. She's very, very ultra confident. And she's like, sing with me, David. And he goes, oh, I don't know. I just don't like the sound of my voice. And she goes, you do not talk about yourself that way in Lizzo's space. You can say, because he said something about being ugly. And she goes, no, you can say, I'm ugly, but I like myself, or I love myself, So she clearly has a strong, I think at the core is how we love ourselves is how we see ourselves. And that's the real deal, is the more you can really love on yourself, the more you're going to impart that, I think, on people. Like if you have a deep self-loathing or a dislike for self, people feel that energy, and then they start to mirror it a little bit, like that insecurity comes out of, if you really have a dislike for your hips or your smile or your teeth or your voice or what have you, then guess what? That's going to come out in some way, shape, or form.
I think also that it's, even without saying it, you don't even have to say it, but if you're feeling it, people can sense that. And they may not even be fully aware of what they're sensing. They just know something's not right here. Yes. And it can make someone, even just a little bit uncomfortable, can take them out of a conversation.
Absolutely.
And so that's what just fascinates me about what it is that you do, and you help people do that, because there's a lot of things I'm sure that you show to people that they hadn't even thought of, and they hadn't realized that, oh, I'm coming across in a way, and this is why it's not working.
Right. So I work with people in terms of that self-awareness piece, where I have a holistic certification as well as a Keirsey temperament certification. And those two pieces, I think, are kind of helpful in the pie, if you will, of self. There's puzzle pieces of, oh, what's my personality? What are my knowledge, skills, and abilities? And so the authentic self versus the conditioned self, it's at the core asking yourself, who's driving the bus? Is it your 7th grader that was very insecure that the boy didn't ask you to dance, or you didn't get invited to that slumber party and you felt so bad about yourself, or you were teased? Is that the self that you're going to be and show at forth? Or is it the authentic self, where it's you're standing in your firm faith of the knowing of who you are and seeing big possibilities and speaking to that? The temperament piece is really interesting, where we all have core needs as human beings, and this is not a new thing that Keirsey talks about. Hippocrates back in 300 BC talked about being sanguine, caloric, based on our blood, that we have natural inclinations of how we work, communicate, and lead. We use words and tools to achieve our goals, and we do it differently based on what's natural to us, our hardwired way of being. So like think of the fox who invades the chicken coop, or the beaver who has to build a dam. You don't see a beaver go into a chicken coop or a fox build a dam. They were built that way to be that way. So when I teach people their inner essence of what is that core need that you desire, that influences everything as to how you use words, how you use tools to get that goal that you want, and how you connect with other people. And so whether you have a core need of a sense of belonging, or knowledge seeking, or self-awareness and unique identity, whatever that may be, or making impact, that matters. And then it's looking at how do we organize our words, and are we more abstract or concrete with the words that we do use. And so it's me helping them saying, okay, where are those gaps? I'm an abstract speaker, and I have to know that I can't talk in metaphors and analogies all day long. You got to bring in some concrete show versus tell, and vice versa. The concrete folks with their observations and details are beautiful, but it's great to pepper in some wonderful metaphors or possibilities and philosophies as well. So it's that balance.
Real quickly, before, in case anybody is distracted at all, we're not sitting next to a gun range. The Schneckloff family who owns this, where we're at, the Acres, at the event center, they're getting a new roof put on today. So we have a little bit of a serenaded music going on, and
Yes.
the air nailers are going on. So that's what's happening back there. Did all of this passion for what it is that you do, did this come from you overcoming something yourself, or was it just a skill that you had and then you just nurtured for yourself to bring further out to be able to help other people?
I think it was a combination of both, actually, because when I was younger, I always, I was a kid of the 80s, and I loved Jim Henson and the Muppets, and seeing those shows, or Walt Disney, and the magic that could happen, the potential of creating story and that coming alive. And so I engaged in theater and speech and all of that throughout junior high, high school, and college. And so it was fostered into just, the more I did it, the more I enjoyed it, the more I was like, well, this is fun. It's play for me. And it brings alive an audience, and there's an engagement that happens. And we are born innately as a human race, a species, to tell stories around the campfire when it's not in a dry band, right?
Yeah.
And so there was that piece of, yes, I was trained, and I went to school for this thing we call theater and communication teaching. And back in the early 2000s, in my teaching, I actually taught here in Council Bluffs at TJ High School, speech and English and some theater. And my last year of teaching there, I actually lost my voice. And we're talking not just a little bit of laryngitis, hoarse for a day, miss a day or two of school. It was like a year-long process. So I actually opened my mouth to speak one class, and nothing came out, like nothing. And it's speech class, so that's beautiful irony. And I'm like, this is going to be interesting. So I quickly ushered a student to get the principal to take over the class, and I had to elicit the help of a speech pathologist. I went to a laryngeologist who specializes with opera singers, and they assessed my vocal cords, and I had vocal cord nodules, like a very, very terrible piece that basically he said, you have two choices. You can have surgery like Julie Andrews did, and her voice changed, so my voice would have changed, or you can do 6 weeks of silence. And so at the time, I'm a teacher, I'm like, do I pay for this very expensive surgery, and I don't know what's gonna happen, if my voice will be deeper, which is possible, and I won't recognize the sound of my own voice? Or do I do 6 weeks of silence and try that? So I did 6 weeks of silence, so I wasn't able to work. I was, when I was out and about, I had a notepad. I could not, he even said no laughing, because the guffaws are really straining, you probably know this, on your vocal cords. Yeah. So that was a really powerful experience of listening to the other, and really acknowledging how much, my enthusiasm, sometimes I got to talking or maybe interrupting people because I was so excited about sharing ideas. And now I became more interested versus trying to be interesting.
I am thinking of different videos that I've seen of Tony Robbins that you can tell when he's been doing a lot of events.
He's
because
strained.
his voice is gravel, and I thought he had completely changed his voice just from speaking like that. And then I saw one about a year ago where he sounded pretty good. So I'm assuming that he'd gone through a resting phase and was able to bring it back. But yeah,
Yes.
that talking, I used to work for a radio network that we would be on multiple stations at the same time, as many as 60 or 70 stations at the same time, and sending voice tracks down to everybody. So I'd be doing, I don't know, 50 to 60 tracks an hour that I'm recording. And one day I did a double shift, which was 10 hours of that.
Oh my word. How did your voice handle that?
It did not.
That's a long time.
And it was, so that's why I can really relate to, straining. And, I never had the nodules that you did, so I'm very thankful for that. But that was, when I was recording audiobooks, I learned that I have a limit. I have a daily limit. And
Yes.
if I cross it, I'm not going to be any good for a while. So,
And it's good you
yeah.
didn't get to that point.
Well, I did once.
Oh dear.
I had a couple of different projects going on, and I am the world's worst procrastinator. And then when I set aside time to do it, now I had noise going on outside, and it was getting through into the recording, so that couldn't be there. Then it snowed overnight, and I had a dozen snow blowers all going at the same time outside. I recorded 45,000 words in one day.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I know that because I recorded my own audiobook and I
Yeah.
almost got to that point again of losing my voice.
Right.
And so I would say to your initial question, was it an experience or my talent or being talented and an innate? It was a blend of both, because what I learned is, oh my goodness, I was going into conditioned pattern beliefs of, what if this book doesn't sell? What if I'm not good enough? What if my voice sounds horrific on audio? Oh my gosh, that stands the test of time. Same with it going out on print. So I really did a lot of like the anxiety strategies that I teach my clients of, using your breath, in visualization, the as if by Laurel Parnell, and it talks about like our brains can be tripped out by if we see ourselves as we want to be, as that confident individual, or picture someone that you're like, I want to be like that person, whoever that may be, Maya Angelou, or, someone empowered that you're like has a presence to them, and you put that energy and you see yourself as that, your brain believes it.
Would you say, if you're looking at a percentage-wise, there's a higher percentage of what you do is psychology versus technique?
Yes, because at the core, that's a great question. At the core, when I was working on my book, a big piece of it, one of the 3 sections is mindset. And you have to have, in order to be magnetic, at the foundation, it's connecting head and heart. And our passion leads and guides our communication, and our minds can get in the way of all of that. If you start having this intrapersonal communication, which is the tape that we talk to ourselves, which we all have those tapes of, oh, what are people going to think of me? Or, oh, why did I say that? I slipped up. All those different things that we say to ourselves, that we say, we have 70,000 thoughts approximately a day, and we can have redundancy rumination of the same ridiculously rude conversations with ourselves, and we're awful to ourselves, more so than to others, that can really impact, how we present ourselves. So yes, I go into the psychology piece, and that to me is the firm foundation. Sort of like when you think of blueprint, we have to see the person, the soul that we are, so that we can step into that magnetism, because you have your own style and presence that makes you you, that if you are crippled by those inner thoughts that are just harsh on yourself, that's going to show up on your body language and your voice.
Something occurred to me not very long ago that exactly what you're talking about with that loop that I get in my head, that if someone else talked to my son the way I talk to myself, I'd punch him in the back of the head.
Right. We talk terribly to ourselves.
I would never let anyone talk to my son that way.
Right.
But yet I talk to myself that way frequently.
And why do you think that is?
Habit. I think it's just getting into well-worn ruts that even though it doesn't feel good, it feels familiar. And when I'm in an area that maybe I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone, that's where the tendency is. Now, I personally have found for myself, and I'm going to turn this whole thing into a therapy session, but I do better. I've said for a long time, I'm much better in front of a crowd than mixed among them.
And what?
Than mixed among them.
Ah.
I do better.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because I'm in control of the narrative if I'm standing up in front of people.
Because you don't know what ball you're going to get thrown in a conversation. And I can definitely echo the getting into a networking situation or a big crowd. There's lots of energies, lots of noise, lots of easily distractions. And I as an empath, I can take that all in. And that's where, when I go to in-person networking events, like where we met, it was smallish compared to some that I've been to, but it's really being in control of the bubble, the energetic bubble. And I also I do what intuitive Abraham Hicks talks about, which is called segment intention. I really set myself up for success by taking a transition time, like the drive to that event. I really think to myself, what is my intention? I want to have, for that one, I had the intention of, I just want 2 thoughtful conversations, and you were one of them. So it's like, okay, it's almost that mind game that you play to make it more comfortable. Because like you, I like the one at a time conversation, like one-on-one I love, because it's one energy, I can be fully focused. When we get into a circle and then there's like potential for lots of conversations and snippets and thoughts, all of a sudden I'm like, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. You know what I mean? I feel it. I'm like, am I to say something, react, so, and so I can totally empathize with what you're saying there.
You talked about having national and international clients. I want to talk to you about the business end of what it is that you do, because obviously you have a product or a service that you provide, but there's still that business end of it too, which is what really fascinates me, is how do you reach out to people and what methods do you use? Is it strictly word of mouth and getting a referral from one another one, or how often does something happen organically and somebody that's not connected to anybody else come into your life?
Yeah. I would say it's very diversified in terms of how people get connected and to work with me. Fortunately, when I worked at Creighton University as a professor in communication studies and started a communications center, I did some consulting and coaching work at that time. So I built a client base in that role. And so then you get to know people and then they pass your name. So a lot of my work is referral based. And in addition, I think a big piece is also getting out there information to help people. My core goal is to really serve, to support, to share and build confidence in people and heart-centered leaders and advocates for change who just are excited to share an idea and can't get it out there. And so whether it's in mental health or agriculture or whatever, if you have a heart of service, I put out the information on social media or on my website. And so when I do have speaking gigs, I invite people to sign up for my newsletter. So I give, 1 or 2 newsletters a month with a tip or a nugget. But then also I post on LinkedIn, as well as I have a YouTube channel. And that one's, I'm going to get that livened up again. It's been a busy, lots of travel, as well as Facebook, that I post videos and things of that nature to just share information. And so then you're starting to put it out there in terms of credibility. The interesting thing is, not terribly long ago, I had UC Davis out of California reach out to me and say, hey, we'd love to have you do some coaching and facilitate a workshop for environmental scientists to be engaging. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. How'd you hear me? Oh, a referral. Well, cool. I think part of what's helped is because I do live in rural Iowa, because I understand the agricultural world, what are cover crops, what does it mean to be resilient and have a resilient farm, or sustainability, those abstract terms. I have an understanding of that. I can really be in that vein, and I get referrals that way because I'm unique in that way. So I've helped scientists make their talks engaging. And I would say it's through networking. So I diversify. I don't rely heavily just on referrals, though those are awesome. They can peter out. They go through ebbs and flows, of course.
Yep.
And I also I think it's being a beacon of information and willingness to share and put it out there. I also try to do an occasional Podcasts are great. That's a marketing tool, I feel like, to share information, as well as in-person and virtual like networking opportunities, like 1 or 2 a month, just to kind of put myself out there, even when I would rather sometimes hunker down, write, or do this, where it's just like nice one-on-one conversation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I can relate to so much of what you're saying, and then there's another aspect of it's not the same. What you do and what I do is not the same. So I think for me, that's what I love about sitting down and having this particular podcast. I meet so many different people, and a lot of them are folks that I already knew, but I learn so much more when I sit down and I talk to them. And I've told everybody that comes out here, and you and I touched on it briefly before we got started, that I don't prep for these, because I think I learn better when I'm sitting across from somebody, and it helps me to truly listen to what a person is saying. And I think that that's a big key in being able to make a connection with somebody. If you're trying to pass along information to them that you have or one of your clients has, you have to listen and you have to understand where that other person is coming from.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say that before you mentioned the listening piece, is that I truly feel, because you are organic with it, you don't have preconceived notions of how this is going to go.
No.
So there's not like stage directions or a script, if you will. So it's not a show or a play, it's an actual conversation. So it's speaking with each other, not at or to, which I think there is a difference in the prepositions. And I do feel with you that I'm seen and heard. And then you comprehend that comprehension piece, where it is a co-creation. It's an sending and receiving of messages, and it's ongoing, as opposed to, okay, wait, let me check my notes, sort of thing. Or I have this next question, I better get to
Right.
it. And I feel I have had podcast interviews where that has happened, and it does feel a bit prescribed and not as natural. And so I think it's great that you see the value in the naturalness of just being with someone and having that conversation.
One of my favorite late night talk show hosts was Craig Ferguson back when he was still on. And the thing that he did, anytime somebody came down and sat in the chair to be a guest, he had a blue card that obviously they all have blue cards and they're reading notes off it. He tears it up and he throws it. That's how he starts every single conversation. Also, I know Larry King
Yes.
was very, very good at having conversational interviews. So that's where it started from. I didn't used to be very good at it.
So what do you think shifted? I mean, was it your awareness, or is it, and then you tried to make changes? Like, do you have an inciting incident that you realized that, okay, I want to get better at this?
I used to do a lot of interviews in radio. I was interviewing football coaches and different things like that. And I wasn't very good at this type of thing, but I was still trying to do it. It's with anything. You get muscle memory, you get better. And listening to other people in the same field. I was a sportscaster for a lot of years doing play-by-play at ball games. I'm kind of just this hodgepodge of every person I've ever heard. And I take a little bit that works, throw out what doesn't work for me, and eventually my own voice comes out. I think it's the same with this. I've just been doing this, and I've been doing interviews for a long time, that I'm leaning into what I'm good at. I'm not good with a script. I get nervous with this. I still get nervous with a script. I don't get nervous if I'm just talking. The one, I think I mentioned to you, I've had one paid speaking engagement. I had a general outline of, okay, I want to talk about this, this, and this, and that was it. Because part of it, it's reading what you're getting back from the person. And that particular room, I was reading, if their ears perk up, I know, okay, they just related to something that I said and they want to hear a little bit more about it. Or if their eyes start to glass over, I realize I'm going down a road. I don't know that I'm actually consciously thinking about it. I think it's just kind of come innate.
Well, and I think that's beautiful, like that you're not having to think about it, because, you cannot not communicate, and thinking is faster and easier to do than listening. And so when you're in it, and you're fully present. I love what Robert Poynton talks about in the world of yes-anding, which is the foundational rule of improvisation is yes is acceptance of the other, and then add something to it. And it doesn't have to be words. It can just be a nod or a lean forward, like I'm with you. And he talks about letting go, noticing more, and using everything. And so if we can let go of what we want this conversation to be or go or do, or any preconceived notions or biases, and notice more, notice what are they not saying, what's that subtext, and then use everything. Like if you've had past conversations or past experiences with this person, use all the gifts that you're given to bring them to the table when you have those conversations.
Another common thing that I tell any client or potential client that's going to come on if I'm going to be producing a podcast for them, and is, well, what do I need to do? How do I get people to listen? How do I do this? And I said, well, number one, you just have to be willing to suck for a while. It's okay. It's really okay.
And to practice it.
Yes.
I mean, it takes listening takes practice. I mean, I literally, before I was teaching, and even while I was teaching at Creighton University, I would be listening. I had probably 50 some odd students or more, sometimes 80, and I would have to listen to weeks of speeches. Well, that 50th or 60th student deserved just as much as attention as the first one. So I trained my ears by listening to long, like TED Talks are supposed to be under 18 minutes. Well, my speeches were under 18 minutes. So I'm like, if I can listen to a couple TED Talks and then extract what the main points are, now remember what the hook is. Now remember the ending. Like, you can train yourself to listen. You have to decide to do the rigor and the work, because listening, and that's what I found in my 6 weeks of silence, I was exhausted. Because people would call me knowing I couldn't talk, and they just talk and tell me all the things, or come over and tell me all the things. And I wanted to do that and be there for them. And it was exhausting.
You probably got very good at facial expressions too, because that's how you're communicating.
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned the TED Talks. You've done more than one.
Yes.
Take me back to before you did the first one. And you've landed it, you know you're going to do it, but now you're preparing for something brand new. Did you have enough familiarity with the process that you didn't feel nervous about it, or was this brand new for you and it took you out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, I would say I was nerve-sighted, nervous and excited, right? So there was this element of sheer excitement of, yay, TED Talk, that's establishing credibility, get my words out there visually, etc., and just share an idea we're spreading, yay. Nervous part was, it was my first time, and though I had listened to TED Talks, and I had sort of an idea cognitively that they were different than keynote speeches, there is a different structure, stance, and style that comes to crafting and delivering a TED Talk. And to your point with scripting, I too am much more like, I perform at the Backline Comedy Club in Omaha, musical improv and regular straight improv. Love it. Give me a suggestion. Just go out there and have a great time developing stories and character. And I have done community theater. With TED Talks, the expectation is you memorize your talk and make it appear as if it's natural and conversational. So it's really a weird dynamic. And so with that being said, I was really probably, if the scale was this, I had more nervousness and excitement most of that ride, mainly because of the heavy expectation I placed on myself. Because when you teach this stuff, then you're like, I better not suck, I better be decent, and not just decent, really, really good. So people go, wow, I want to work with her. And you put that pressure, that weight on yourself, on your shoulders. The second one was it was a whole different set of nervousness, because it was like, oh, now I'm talking about a different topic, about how to find your story in a former university where I went to college, like all these things, like different layers of things. And again, we can get trippy. It's the mindset. Context matters, past history matters, if whatever you're talking about matters. Even just looking at this past month, I have done a keynote for teenagers, a big, keynote for 200 bankers, and Leadership Iowa, right? 3 very vastly different audiences throughout, in Nebraska, Omaha. Guess which one of the 3 I was most nervous for? I
would guess the younger
crowd. It was.
Yeah.
The high schoolers. the junior high schoolers. And you know why? Because they are our hardest crowd. And what I ended up doing though is I really sat with myself that week building up, is reminding myself, and even talking to my 14-year-old, saying, tell me what's funny, what's interesting. What do you think of this idea? He goes, Mom, that's not going to land. I'm like, all right. I took his feedback. So talking to that target audience, getting some of those insights, but then also going, okay, that was a few years ago, 30. Let's see what that was all about when I was in the late 80s, 90s. And so, yeah. And I would say it went swimmingly well because of my heart led the communication. I was fully present. And I, for the first time, took a risk, and I didn't even take my notes up there because I'm like, I've prepared this talk. Let the spirit move you. You've got an hour. Be with these kids. And I tell you what, it was awesome. First of all, it took some serious faith and trust in myself and preparation ahead of time. I didn't just wing it. But I then, in the moment, changed a story or two that landed way better than the ones I had planned because of the conversations I had with those audience members prior.
Well, it is definitely fall in Iowa right now.
Yes, woo! We've got, we're getting some good energy with the wind turbines, I'm guessing, at this point, right?
That's looking for the positive, I think, is, I love being around people like you just because
Thank you.
You're very good at that.
Well, thank you.
I'm also very thankful that you came out here today because you're in a field that I haven't spoken with anybody in yet. So I'm trying to meet as many people as I can or work with as many people as I can because it just enriches my life, and hopefully it enriches other people's lives too as we're doing this. And obviously we want to give you an opportunity to let anyone know how to find you online or wherever that if they want to learn more about what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me at tinabakehouse.com. That's T-I-N-A, Bakehouse, bake as in baking cookies, house as in casa.com. And then also, so you can sign up for my newsletter there, find my book, Discovering Our Magnetic Speaker Within, audio or print. And I do have Magnetic Speaking with Tina B as my YouTube channel, which has a lot of really rich videos that give you some tutorials, little nuggets to take with you to help you with storytelling, to help you with public speaking, to help you get out of your head and land, into your heart. It's being you and being true. And so tinabakehouse.com is my website. You can find me on LinkedIn as well as Facebook, and I post there as well.
I know that when you came to that networking group, it's involved with Advanced Southwest Iowa, that entrepreneurial meetup that we do. Yeah, I knew pretty quickly. This is somebody I want to meet.
Oh, thank you.
So you give that off very well, and I'm thankful that, as I said, you agreed to come out and do this, and I'm hoping that we can continue on.
Yeah, Todd, thank you so much for the invitation, and I really appreciated the conversation, and I would love to say to be continued.
And we will be back with another episode of Campfire Conversations very soon, maybe even with a fire next time.
Hey, we had fire inside, right?
There you go. Until then, take care.
Thank you.